What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks into what should be a routine late-night interview, only to find himself facing a host determined to tear him down on live television? Tonight we dive into the shocking confrontation that left Tom Hiddleston storming off the Jimmy Kimmel live set. And trust me, what you're about to hear will change how you see late-night television forever. But before we get into this explosive story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, telling me which celebrity interview moment shocked you the most, because this one is going to blow your mind. The atmosphere in the Jimmy Kimmel live studio was electric that Tuesday evening as audiences settled into their seats, completely unaware they were about to witness television history in the making. Tom Hiddleston, fresh off his latest Marvel project and riding high on critical acclaim, had arrived at the studio in good spirits, greeting crew members with his characteristic warmth and British charm. The pre-interview conversations had gone smoothly, with producers briefing both parties on the planned topics, everything from his upcoming films to his recent charitable work with UNICEF. Jimmy Kimmel, however, had different plans brewing behind his trademark grin. Sources backstage revealed that Kimmel had been in an unusually combative mood all day, snapping at writers and dismissing suggested interview questions as too soft. The host had apparently grown frustrated with what he perceived as the sanitized nature of celebrity interviews, complaining to his team that guests were becoming too rehearsed, too careful, too boring for good television. He wanted something raw, something that would generate headlines and social media buzz, and Tom Hiddleston, with his pristine public image and articulate responses, seemed like the perfect target. As the cameras rolled and Kimmel delivered his opening monologue, the audience laughed at his usual political jabs and pop culture references. But those paying close attention might have noticed the edge in his voice, the way his smile seemed just a bit too forced. When it came time to introduce his guest, Kimmel's tone carried an undercurrent of something that wasn't quite enthusiasm. Tom Hiddleston walked out to thunderous applause, his navy blue suit impeccably tailored, his smile genuine as he waved to the crowd and settled into the guest chair, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. The first few minutes proceeded normally enough, with Kimmel asking about Hiddleston's latest projects and the actor responding with his usual eloquence and humor. But seasoned viewers of late-night television might have picked up on subtle cues that something was off. Kimmel's questions carried an undertone of skepticism. His follow-ups seemed designed to corner rather than explore, and his body language suggested a predator circling its prey rather than a host facilitating an engaging conversation. Hiddleston, ever the professional, maintained his composure and continued answering thoughtfully, even as the questions became increasingly pointed. When Kimmel brought up his previous relationship with Taylor Swift, a topic that had been explicitly marked as off-limits during pre-interview discussions, the first crack in the evening's facade became visible. Hiddleston's smile faltered for just a moment, a flash of confusion crossing his features as he realized the host was deliberately venturing into forbidden territory. The audience, still largely unaware of the brewing tension, continued to respond positively to Hiddleston's charm, but in the production booth, producers were beginning to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Phone calls were made to network executives as it became clear that their host was going completely off script, abandoning the carefully planned interview structure in favor of something far more volatile and unpredictable. What started as uncomfortable questions quickly transformed into something much more sinister as Kimmel pressed forward with his attack, seemingly energized by Hiddleston's visible discomfort. The host leaned back in his chair with a smirk that the audience initially mistook for playful banter, but his next words carried the unmistakable venom of someone looking to inflict maximum damage. He questioned not just Hiddleston's relationship choices, but his authenticity as a person, suggesting that his charitable work and public persona were nothing more than calculated career moves designed to maintain his marketable image. Hiddleston, still maintaining his British politeness despite the increasingly hostile environment, attempted to redirect the conversation back to his professional work. His voice remained steady, but those watching closely could see the tension building in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair just a little too tightly. He tried to laugh off Kimmel's more pointed accusations, but his responses were becoming shorter, more clipped, as he realized this wasn't going to be the friendly chat he had prepared for. The audience began to sense something was wrong, as the usual rhythm of late-night banter gave way to something that felt more like an interrogation. Nervous laughter replaced genuine amusement, and several audience members could be seen exchanging confused glances as they tried to process what they were witnessing. The carefully orchestrated dance between host and guest that typically characterizes these shows had devolved into something much more uncomfortable and unpredictable. Kimmel seemed to feed off the growing tension, his attacks becoming more personal and more vicious with each passing minute. He questioned Hiddleston's intelligence, mocking his classical theater training and suggesting that his Shakespearean background made him pretentious and out of touch with regular people. The host's tone grew increasingly contemptuous as he painted Hiddleston as an elitist who looked down on American culture and audiences, deliberately mischaracterizing the actor's thoughtful responses as condescension. The breaking point came when Kimmel decided to cross a line that should never be crossed. On live television, he brought up Hiddleston's family, making snide comments about his upbringing and education, twisting what should have been neutral biographical information into weapons designed to embarrass and humiliate his guest. Hiddleston's facade of politeness finally began to crack, as Kimmel suggested that his success was purely the result of privilege rather than talent or hard work. For the first time in the interview, Hiddleston's voice carried a sharp edge as he, firmly but politely, asked Kimmel to keep his family out of the discussion. The actor's training and professionalism were still holding him together, but anyone could see that he was reaching his limit. His jaw was tight, his posture had shifted from relaxed to defensive, and his eyes had taken on a steely quality that suggested he was done being a passive target for the host's inexplicable hostility. Kimmel, however, interpreted Hiddleston's boundary setting as weakness and decided to push even harder. He made a comment so deliberately cruel and personal that even his own audience recoiled, the nervous laughter dying completely as people realized they were witnessing something that had gone far beyond entertainment into the realm of genuine cruelty. The comment, which attacked not just Hiddleston's character, but his very worth as a human being, hung in the air like a toxic cloud, poisoning what little remained of the evening's pretense of civility. The moment that comment left Kimmel's lips, something fundamental shifted in the studio atmosphere, as if everyone present suddenly understood they were no longer watching a talk show, but bearing witness to a profound betrayal of the basic respect that should exist between human beings. Hiddleston's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped completely. And for the first time in his public career, the famously diplomatic actor let his true feelings show without filter or restraint. Standing up from his chair, with a fluid motion that spoke to years of stage training, Hiddleston fixed Kimmel with a stare that could have frozen fire, his voice dropping to a register that commanded absolute attention from everyone in the studio. His words, delivered with the precision of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of language, cut through Kimmel's smug expression like a blade through paper, dismantling not just the host's arguments, but his entire justification for the evening's cruelty with surgical efficiency. Hiddleston spoke about the responsibility that comes with having a platform, about the trust that audiences place in entertainers and hosts, and about how that trust had been violated in the most fundamental way possible. His British accent, usually charming and refined, became a weapon of devastating eloquence as he explained exactly why Kimmel's behavior was not just unprofessional, but deeply harmful to the very institution of entertainment that they both claimed to serve. The audience sat in stunned silence as Hiddleston continued his verbal dismantling of everything Kimmel represented, his words carrying the weight of someone who had been pushed too far and was finally fighting back with everything he had. He didn't raise his voice or resort to crude language, but every syllable landed with the impact of a master craftsman wielding his tools with deadly precision, exposing Kimmel's actions for what they truly were: a cowardly attack on someone who had come in good faith. Kimmel, perhaps realizing that he had awakened something he couldn't control, attempted to regain the upper hand by dismissing Hiddleston's response as an overreaction, but his words sounded hollow and desperate against the actor's commanding presence. The host's earlier confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that he had picked a fight with someone far more intelligent and articulate than he had bargained for. The final moment came when Hiddleston, having said everything he needed to say, simply turned his back on Kimmel and walked toward the exit, his dignity intact despite everything that had transpired. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the silent studio as cameras continued to roll, capturing every second of his departure. At the edge of the stage, he paused just long enough to look back at Kimmel one final time, a look that conveyed more contempt and disappointment than 1,000 words could have expressed. As Hiddleston disappeared behind the curtain, the studio remained frozen in shock, the audience unsure whether to applaud or remain silent, while Kimmel sat at his desk looking like a man who had just realized the true cost of his actions. The remaining minutes of the show were filled with awkward attempts at damage control, but everyone knew that something irreversible had taken place, something that would be talked about and analyzed for years to come. That's the story of how one of Hollywood's most respected actors was pushed to his breaking point by a host who forgot that being behind a desk doesn't give you the right to destroy someone's dignity for entertainment. What did you think of Hiddleston's response? Was he right to walk out, or should he have stayed and continued the interview? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories that reveal what really happens when the cameras are rolling.